The episode opens with Malcolm Merlin watching Damien Dark's death on his television, and basically Eobard recruits both of them. He comes through a portal, and he basically says, "Hey Malcolm, do you want to join us so we can change your fate?" And he says, "Sure." So it opens up with that scene. So we saw how they all met up, and then it flashes forward to 8 months later, and they're all torturing Rip, or Phil, as he's now known, and they're trying to figure out where the Spear of Destiny is, and so they're all interrogating him, and they don't seem to be getting anywhere. Well, Damien tortures him and cuts out his tooth, and it turns out that there was a code on his tooth that led to a Swiss security deposit box, and so he is tasked, along with Malcolm, to go and sort of recover whatever's in this box. So they go to Switzerland, they go to this bank, and they try to break in using Rip or Phil, and it's very hilarious because Phil, of course, his mind's still in the 70s, so he doesn't recognize the retinal scan or anything that's going on, but he has to try to play the part. But things don't work out. They call security on them, and Dark and Malcolm basically had to fight their way out, and they leave with Phil, but without whatever's in the vault. And after they do this, they basically come back to the Legion of Doom lair, and they start fighting each other because Eobard said he'd punish whoever fails. And so there had been tension building this whole entire episode up to this point, of course, but Malcolm and Damien start fighting each other, and it's awesome to see them fight, see these two sort of big-headed villains with huge egos starting to fight each other. And Phil basically interrupts him and says, "This is just what Eobard wanted you to do." So they stop fighting, and they come up with a plan. So it then flashes forward to the Reverse Flash, or Eobard Thawne, coming back, and he's basically like, "Where are they?" And he says, "At the bank. They told me not to tell you where they were." That's what Phil tells Eobard. So he goes to the bank, and Malcolm and Damien have this plan. They lock him in the vault with them, and he says, "I'm going to kill both of you." And they say, "Well, do you have somewhere to be?" Because his watch is going off. And they've been trying throughout the whole entire episode, not only them, but the Legends are trying to figure out, why would the Reverse Flash need the Spear of Destiny? You can just change time. Well, they've figured out that something was after him. And through process of elimination and through scenes, we get to see that the Black Flash is after him. Basically, the Speed Force took Jay Garrick's body and made it into this ultra powerful time wraith that's after Eobard. Since he'd been erased from the timeline and only exists because of Flashpoint, he has to keep running forward in time to maintain his existence. So Damien now and Malcolm have the upper hand, and they say, "Okay, we're all going to be equal partners, or else we're going to let this happen. Let this Black Flash sort of catch up to you and kill you." So he agrees to it, agrees to their terms, and basically what they do is, it's sort of like a Jurassic Park, where the T-Rex couldn't sense the kids whenever they didn't move. The Black Flash couldn't sense Eobard if he didn't move. They use him as bait and trick the Black Flash into a situation where Damien and Malcolm and Eobard are able to shove him into the vault. And it turns out the device that they got from the vault was Rip's brain memories, and they adjust them. And at the end of the episode, it shows Rip in the 1700s, and basically he shoots George Washington with a modern day pistol. So they scrambled his brain waves and sent him in the past to kill George Washington. But this whole episode basically revolved around Damien Dark, Malcolm Merlin, and Eobard, all their villainy, and sort of the tension between them as these three powerhouse people from the Arrowverse. These three powerhouse villains came together and kind of had to accomplish a goal this episode, and it was very interesting to see them on screen together. Josh Barrowman and Neil McDonald did insanely well with their roles this episode. It was fun seeing them go around, basically boss Phil around, and basically fight over who was right and who was wrong. And it was also great to figure out why Eobard wants the spear. I thought it was wonderful that they could focus a whole entire episode on the Legion of Doom and still have it be acceptable. Now, the side plot this episode worked well as well because Stein basically brought his daughter on the ship. So, the main plot of this episode, of course, was involving the Legion of Doom and what they were doing, but the side plot was about the Legends, and they brought Stein's daughter on the ship to hook up the amulet to Gideon so they could figure out where they needed to go to find the Spear of Destiny, and they do that, but she figures out, Lily figures out that she's a time aberration, and her and Stein have this really emotional moment where they talk about how even though she's a time aberration, she's still his daughter and how much he loves her. And it's very powerful to see that. And I don't think it's a throwaway plot at all. I like seeing that addressed because Lily was kind of just an idea that was thrown into Legends of Tomorrow a while back, but she was never really approached in a good way. But I mean, this episode was insane. Like, if you can take a show about this group of superheroes and pause basically that show, and on the same series put a whole entire episode up about the legion of villains that's going after them, that's pretty impressive. And they did it in such a wonderful and tasteful way, and the continuity of the Arrowverse expressed in this episode, from Damien dying on Malcolm Merlin's TV screen to I would say Damien making fun of Malcolm for losing a hand. Everything this episode was very connected, and it was very connected to the Flash, and Legend of Tomorrow sort of is the glue that sticks the Arrowverse together, and this episode really proved that. And it was so cool to focus on those villains, just have a villain-centric episode. I love this episode. It's one of the best episodes of television I've seen in a long time, and I think it even blew last week's episode out of the water, which is saying something because Raiders of the Lost Ark was amazing. So I guess between the crew banter on the Wave Rider, of course, the villain's point of view that we got to see that was wonderfully portrayed, Robert Duvall's performance as Phil, the other version of Rip, and the Stein and Lily subplot, between all of those things, this episode was amazing. For a final score, I have to give it a 9.7 out of 10. I hope you've enjoyed my review for the Legion of Doom.